Hey everybody, my name is Justin and I am one of our 4 therapists in residence here at SCU. And I'm here today to talk about emotionally regulating ourselves during turbulent times or, just difficult scenarios or times of the year. This is a topic that I feel is very near and dear to me as a therapist. It's something that I've been working on personally in my adult life, managing my emotion, expressing myself, and just doing my best to interact in a healthy way with others in the world around me. And I want to share with you guys some things that I found helpful both with my clients and in my personal life that has been helpful for managing emotions. One thing I'm going to be referencing throughout this talk is a tool that was created by Mark Brackett, who has a PhD in psychology. He currently leads the Center for Emotional Intelligence at Yale University, and he wrote a really awesome book called Permission to Feel, and so I will be referencing that throughout. He uses a technique called the ruler technique, and I'll be going through it and sharing with you guys the most important parts from that teaching. And so just to share a bit of philosophy that Mark Brackett brings to the idea of emotional regulation is that emotional intelligence is just as important as our cognitive intelligence, what we see a lot as IQ. He makes the point that, scientists don't love emotional intelligence because there's no really standardized test to track it. But with, IQ, there's hundreds of tests you can take, right, to measure your cognitive intelligence. Society, we base a lot of our value off of this kind of cognitive intelligence versus emotional intelligence. And one major way we see that is that in our schooling and system, we don't really have many standardized ways that emotional intelligence is taught. I believe only about the last 10 years, certain schools have been implementing this more in their curriculum. But if you're someone like me, over the age of 20, then you most likely did not have an emotional intelligence class as you were growing up in school. And so what this tells us is we're kind of left to fend for ourselves when we're trying to figure out emotions. Sure, we may have had some really impactful parents or healthy relationships or people that mentored us during our upbringing. But the reality is that a lot of our parents didn't really know this information or look into this, or maybe they had a hard time managing their emotions as well. With social constructs and psychology, a lot of that rubs off on us, right? And we are conditioned in ways that our parents kind of lived, and we take some of that on ourselves. And so to kind of deconstruct some of that conditioning, it's really important as adults to recognize, what we're feeling, and then being able to process those feelings and express them in a healthy way. We'll be talking about that today. Another cool example that Mark Brackett talks a lot about is how, the very extreme examples of a child, right, who's experiencing emotions and they're feeling emotions all day, every day, and they're very raw and open about their emotions. Yeah, they haven't yet taken on the abilities to kind of compartmentalize things or manage those emotions in healthy ways. But at the same time, they're constantly accessing their emotions, right? And as we grow older into adults, some of us have a hard time accessing those emotions, and we kind of take the other extreme of just pushing everything down, not expressing those emotions, or not even maybe wanting to look at those emotions. But emotions are really, giving us information about what we're feeling, what we're experiencing. And so we want to be very conscious of how we are handling those emotions. There's a quote out there, I don't know who said it, but it's it's important to handle your emotions before they handle you, right? So this idea of the child just being totally overstimulated by the emotions, and it kind of takes on our entire cognitive functioning. Whereas an adult, we want to find that balance of being able to express and feel in a healthy way, while also being able to manage the emotion and manage the people around us. We're going to look at ways that you can really kind of take a step-by-step process of looking at emotion and processing it, and that's what we're going to talk about today. The first thing I want to talk about is step number 1 in feeling any emotion is recognizing it, right? So this idea, if I'm feeling something, there's a source for that, right? Whether, the trigger is a very common word used these days, but in events, it could be something we hear, it could be something we see on TV, it could be something a friend says, it could even be a memory that gets awakened at some part of our day. But once we recognize like, oh, I'm having this reaction or I'm feeling something, that's the first step in being able to handle and manage an emotion. And so one way to do this is, it's a really basic way, is we can first track the sources, look at like, all right, where's my energy at this time, right? Because a lot of things, a lot of emotions, a lot of things we get triggered on is because we may not be sleeping enough, we may not have eaten food, right? We might be angry at something. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Or we may be feeling just lonely or disconnected, right? So we want to look at like those four main things: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. HALT, that's a quick acronym that you can use to just look at the basic things that we need socially in our lives and to live in a healthy way. So just look at, man, can I meet any of those four objectives in this moment? Can I give myself some food, some sleep? Can I reach out for connection? And then also maybe it's anger, right? Take that for example. We usually look at anger as a secondary emotion. There's almost always something beneath the anger. So if you think of anger like an iceberg, the anger is always at the top, and there's typically a bigger mass that's beneath anger. A lot of sources of anger is like a feeling of being underappreciated, an injustice. Maybe it's an unfairness, maybe a frustration, somebody betrayed you. There's a lot out there, right? And so it's the more specific we can get with the source of that anger, for example, the easier it'll be to kind of understand it and then work with that. First thing, again, checking those HALT acronyms, seeing where I may be getting a bit riled up from, and then also looking at like how pleasant am I feeling today, right? So maybe I'm just it's an off day, and maybe I'm just not having a great day. We're not always going to be 100% joyful or in a good mood. Totally okay. And just noticing if that pleasantness is linked to any other emotions or feelings, just like the anger, if I can feel into where that may be coming from. First step is recognizing. So recognizing I'm having an emotion, I'm having a feeling, and doing our best to identify it. Another great way you can do this also is looking at a feelings wheel, and no shame in using tools, because I know that like my vocabulary was not the most robust with ways to describe emotions, but the feeling wheel is one example of being able to look at a chart and being able to say, okay, I'm feeling like really happy today, and it's like, oh, can I like go deeper with that? I'm feeling, maybe there's like a curiosity to what I'm feeling. Maybe I'm feeling super adventurous. Maybe like I just did a creative pursuit, and that creative pursuit made me feel really good. But just looking at where deeper levels of the feeling, same thing with anger, right? Is there a frustration? Is there an injustice? And looking at that and understanding where it's first coming from. And so on that same idea of recognizing an emotion, we also want to understand it. Just as I've been explaining, using something like the feelings wheel can be really helpful for understanding where the source of this feeling is coming from. Once I can understand the feeling, I can begin to have some compassion for myself. I can begin to fully like embrace and accept that emotion, and also I can like share that emotion with myself or another person, which takes us into the third step. So we have recognizing and understanding the emotion. Then we also have the idea of labeling the emotion. Similar to using the feelings wheel, when we label something, we're able to kind of give it a concrete place and name. And by doing this as humans, a lot of us humans, we like order, right? We like to kind of be able to look at something and say, okay, this is that, this is this. And this way we can kind of logically make sense of the emotions, the things we're feeling. And with like emotions and feelings, there's some intuition and gut feelings we have, but it's also something that takes work to identify and to label. And so that's where it can be really helpful for seeking support through connections, friends, also therapists, people that you can trust to talk about like get to the bottom of what you're feeling, right? Because a lot of times we need to also talk through things in order to find something that feels good for us. It's like you're talking to a friend and you have this like, connection, or, oh, I felt that same way or had that same experience. And it's through another person or through connection that we can kind of, create that connection within ourselves and what we're feeling. So again, ways that we can label the emotions is, through our own self-inquiry, looking at what we're feeling, where that source may be coming from, putting a name to it, right? I'm feeling cheerful today. I'm feeling joyful. Maybe I'm feeling fearful, or I'm stressed, I'm confused, sleepy. There's so many different labels we can put on a feeling. And so once we have that label, as I just kind of alluded to, connecting with somebody, connecting within ourselves is a really helpful way to then start to express that emotion, right? Because once we begin to notice the emotion and we make the decision to recognize it, we're kind of doing the opposite of pushing it away or pushing it down. I like to use a metaphor of sweeping dust under the rug, because the idea of like, all right, I'm not going to look at it. I'm just going to quickly just do the simplest, easiest solution, which is kind of push it on the rug so I don't see it. I don't have to feel it. But as we know, like if you just keep pushing things down, keep sweeping dust under the rug, you think of it as a metaphor of like that rug just keeps rising until there's just like all this nastiness under there and it becomes a big lump, and then like you can't even walk over your rug, right? It becomes so big, and that's when we start to see things like volatility or explosiveness, or we know that emotions can manifest into physical problems, right? There's a lot of research out there that our body actually holds emotions, specifically in the fascia part of our underneath our skin. So this idea that things that go unexpressed often can create bigger problems, right? And so that's where the expression is, I would say, maybe the most important part of all this, because once we see the thing and then we can identify it, label it, then we really need to figure out what is our best means of expressing this emotion. Some people really like talking to other people, and that's awesome. We connect and we can, have healthy communication and really express how we feel, and that's really great. Some of us may take more of a active or a movement approach. We call it like a bottom-up approach, right? From somatics, right? Maybe I'm feeling this emotion strongly in my chest, right? So I can take some deep breaths. Maybe I breathe in through my nose, breathe out through my mouth, do that a few times, and just imagine the weight or the tension in my chest dissipating. And so the more I'm present with the feeling and I can breathe through that, I can then literally feel it dissipate and leave my body. A lot of us work out or exercise, and I think that's also a really great thing. It keeps our energy moving. We can kind of move stagnant parts of our body, but it's also really cool to like go into physical activity with an intention, right? Like try to work through some of this anxiety that I've been feeling recently, and just maybe setting an intention for that exercise. Expression can look like a lot of different things. It can also look like journaling. It can look like writing down our thoughts and feelings, naming those thoughts and feelings, right? The expression can look like art, right? We know that music, a lot of times, sometimes just like listening to music can help us to move through an event or situation, or just like a moment of feeling. Some of us will be creating art, right? Some of us are going to be, transmuting our emotions and feelings into something beautiful, or just something that outlets that energy. And there's a lot of different ways also to create art, right? Like even like cooking, I always say, is like a really awesome creative pursuit that can feel really good and be really nourishing. So the expression part, it's just gonna take some exploring. If you haven't already, look at what are some ways that I can express myself and express these emotions. Again, going back to talk therapy, a great way of expressing oneself and really creating an intentional space for that expression. So once we've found some form of expression, and also like it's really great to know that like different forms of expressions can be for different emotions or different situations. Sometimes like taking that active approach of doing something about the emotion. If there's an injustice, if there's an unfairness, then I want to go talk to somebody, right? I want to go maybe protest how I'm seeing the situation, just expressing myself in a way that my values and my morals kind of line up with, and that's living authentically. So we want to be just really mindful of how we're being able to express all the different ways we're feeling. And so once we have the recognizing, the identifying, we have the labeling of the thing we're feeling, we've expressed the thing we're feeling, we're like taking this full kind of cycle of an emotion or a feeling, then we simply do it again and again. And that's the regulating part of this is, we want to, once we find a really helpful way that works for us, you want to make sure it's like daily maintenance on a car or your apartment. It's like you really want to just keep things clean that you really care about. And with emotions, it's the same way, as we need to sometimes be vulnerable, sometimes be courageous and share, or connect with a friend or a helping professional. And yeah, in that way, we're constantly doing this maintenance on ourselves so that eventually it kind of feels more natural. A lot of people I've met, including myself, have felt like, oh man, I don't feel comfortable sharing, or it just it doesn't feel right for me. Which, yeah, some of that could be in our nature, but from my experience, a lot of that's more conditioning than our nature. Is we've gotten so used to just keeping things in that when we start sharing, we talk or we be vulnerable, it feels a little weird, right? It feels a little icky because we're not so used to it. Yeah, really like asking yourself, like, can this be helpful? Identifying this emotion, feeling, and sharing it. Is this something that can, yeah, be useful in my life? And that's the gist here. That's like the kind of crash course in emotional regulation. If anyone's interested in Mark Brackett's work, I highly recommend you check out his writing. That book is called Permission to Feel. Yeah, it's kind of a longer one. It's got a lot of really good research, but I think you'll find some really cool anecdotes and pointings in that book. If anyone's interested in reaching out for support through counseling or therapy, we have just an amazing network here of clinicians at SCU. So we are always more than happy to see you guys and support you guys. One really easy way to do that is through our check-in system, where you can simply just log in through the student health portal. It's the little green circle icon. Once you hit that, you can just look at schedule an appointment, and we have Monday through Friday all kinds of open slots. So that's a really great, effective way. No cost. Everything's confidential. So yeah, really great way just to kind of even ask questions or test the waters of therapy. But yeah, if you made it thus far, thanks for watching through the full video. Again, my name is Justin, and talking with you guys, and I hope this helps in some way. And I hope you have a great rest of your day or evening. Peace.